most important news of the week? Is it Lahaina and how Joe Biden went to sympathize with the people and ended up mumbling, I should say, about how a kitchen fire turned into a conflagration that almost burned his 67 Corvette? Is that it? Is the biggest story of the week the mugshot of ex-President Trump? Is the biggest story of the week the so-called debate among GOP candidates? Maybe the big story of the week is how NVIDIA and AI has moved NVIDIA to the most valuable corporation, or one of the most valuable corporations in the world, and just a huge stock market success. Is the biggest story of the week a country song, Rich Men North of Richmond? Is the biggest story of the week Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group in Russia, who mysteriously died in a plane crash in Russia after he crossed Putin? Is that it? Or perhaps it's Jerome Powell speaking at Jackson Hole, mumbling about how, well, we may or may not raise interest rates in the future. We're not sure, but we're watching all of the signs. I would submit to you all of these are just passing stories. They'll go away. You won't remember them 6 weeks from now or a year from now, certainly not 10 years from now. The one story that you will remember that you didn't hear about perhaps this week is a little meeting in South Africa called the BRICS meeting. BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That was a name coined back in the early 2000s, I think, as a way of talking about rising economies in the third world. Well, those rising economies in the third world have, in large part, done pretty well for themselves. And now they're thinking about expanding, and in fact, have invited Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, all to, as well as, did I say Argentina? Yeah, Argentina. To join BRICS. Now, what do all of those have in common? Well, if you look at a world map, you'll notice that with Saudis, Iran, and the Emirates, you've got the Persian Gulf surrounded. The Persian Gulf, of course, is the largest source of oil in the world. If you take a look at it from a currency point of view, you'll notice that all of these countries, Russia in particular, are countries that really don't like having to have reserves held in the dollar. What happened to the Russia's reserve dollars that were held, reserves that were held in dollar form? They got confiscated whenever the United States decided that Putin did a bad thing by invading Ukraine. Well, he did a bad thing, but keep in mind that the Ukraine has been in flux, has been ruled by everybody from Poland to Russia and many powers in between over millennia. It's always been a battleground, probably always will be a battleground, but it's not the United States battleground. It doesn't make a whole lot of difference who rules Ukraine as far as the security and safety of the United States. But it's now it was the spark plug that caused the dollar to be confiscated by the United States. And will the BRICS new expanded group decide that maybe we don't want to be trading in dollars? Let me give you a little history. Why is the dollar so important in world trade? Why is it so important to the United States? Well, the dollar used to be pegged to gold. It used to be based on gold. President Nixon ended that back in 1971 when he took the dollar off the gold standard. And shortly thereafter, Henry Kissinger, his Secretary of State, made a deal with the devil, with Saudi Arabia. Kissinger said, "We will defend you, Saudi Arabia, against any kind of challenge, either domestically or foreign, if you agree to price your oil in dollars." At the time, and still, Saudis were one of the largest producers of oil in the world. And if every other country in the world that wanted to buy oil had to first buy dollars, that meant a whole lot of resources and money went from other currencies into dollars, causing the so-called petrodollar. The fact that the petrodollar was or has been the de facto world standard of currency means that upwards of 70-80% of international trade was conducted in dollars. That's been going down. It's been going down dramatically since our adventure with sanctions against Russia took place. We're at a point now where where the dollar, if BRICS decides to get rid of the dollar as their currency and replace it with another currency, a BRICS currency, some kind of a currency linked to gold, linked to commodities, whatever, that's going to be discussed behind closed doors. You can believe it. You can bet on it over the next several months. And if the dollar ends up getting displaced, which will probably happen gradually, the dollar becomes basically just another local currency, sort of like the Mexican peso or the Botswana pula or the Guatemalan quetzal. It becomes something that we can trade at our local Starbucks, but not anything that we can use to buy anything on the world stage. The geographic stranglehold on oil is one issue. The other issue is that a large share of the metals required for green energy are being produced in BRICS countries. The third, fourth, and fifth producers of lithium, for instance, are China, Argentina, and Brazil. And the Chinese have a monopoly nearly on the production of rare earth elements, which are necessary for the manufacture of semiconductors and other electronic gear. We have a huge problem on our hands that will materialize itself gradually over the next decade or two. It's the story that should be the biggest story of the week, and it's getting a footnote. That's my report from the fields.